My name is Nadege, and I'm a part of CES, and I want to present you an initiative that started in Europe. This is a network that fights against domestic violence. So we want to act against exclusion, and we want to fight against any exclusion in and with the companies. We are today a network of companies that are involved in this network, the biggest in France. There's more than 6,000 companies that are members, and we work in different fields, the matter of diversity, equality between men and women, education, access to employment, precarious employment, and we also work with big projects having to do with social innovation. We also deal with the financial side. For example, when we have projects that have to do with access to employment, we teach people how to come and ask for an employment, and so that's it. We started to work on the matter of violence about 4 years ago, and today we manage the project called CES, about which I will talk to you. I would like to remind you what the numbers are in Europe. I don't know if you can hear me well. So 1 over 3 women have experienced violence during her life, and mostly by a partner or former partner, and 62% of these victims are employed. So we can suppose that any employer will be in contact with a woman who has been or will be a victim of family violence. And there was a study made in this matter, and it was discovered that 42% of European women who were victims of domestic violence had talked about it at work. And if you compare to that, 22% of European women say they know someone at work who's been a victim of domestic violence. There's also a study that showed that there's a cost to this in Europe, 122 billion euros each year. That's something enormous. So there's at the same time loss of productivity, there's absenteeism, there's the death of the victim, there's the cost for public, medical, legal, and social services, and of course the physical and emotional impact on the victims. So we started to work in 2014 with a European project called At the time, we didn't know what companies did to fight against domestic violence. So the first step was to study what was happening on the field. This was a project that was done in 5 European countries, and national studies were done to see what the legal framework was in each of these countries and who were the actors in these matters. And we discovered that some companies had already acted in a quite innovative manner in domestic violence. Also for managers and for employees, some training had been done. And also human resources had worked on it. That was the first step. We decided to continue. In 2017, we understood that this was a matter of global society. This was something complex. And so we understood that we had to continue. So second step was to create this network of companies that include more than 30 companies in Europe. So these companies represent approximately 2 million employees. There's multinationals, there's private public enterprises, there's institutions, so all sorts of types of companies are involved. This project started at the beginning of 2018 and will stop in 2020. The goal is to recruit more and more companies as time passes by in this subject, and we're going to act in different ways. Some have already started. So we have different tools. First of all, a chart of engagement. That is really the basis. All the companies that want to get involved have to do this engagement charter. I'll explain to you later what this means. We also have mobilization events. So the companies meet 3 times a year in the workplace, and there's really an approach of working with the stakeholders. So there's tools that are given to the companies but created with them, and all the stakeholders are working on the matter. We also have events that are awareness events, mobilization events, bigger scale ones. So, for example, last year in Paris, we organized the signing of the engagement charter, and different companies joined us. And we also wanted for the public entities to get to know what is happening in what we are doing and to get involved. There's also awareness events that are organized within the companies. These can be conferences, workshops, for all the employees. We also started to talk about domestic violence and family violence in particular, not only violence to women. So this is the door to all of this, and we organize different trainings for our employees. We have different trainings, face-to-face, and we try to train them in the companies, and we train people long-term for them to be able to teach that as well. So it depends on the company and on the prism that they use to look at this matter, but it can be managers, it can be universities, staff representatives, people who work in the medical world. And these trainings are given by specialized organizations. So in France, you have the Fédération Internationale de Solidarité Femmes, and during these trainings, people learn what domestic violence is, the effect it can have, the impact it has on work, and as managers and employees, what it is that they can do in order to give support to a colleague. What are the resources that are available? Nobody's trying to convert employees into heroes, but rather to teach them how to react when a colleague is talking about this violence, and to direct them to the proper tools. We're also doing some training with different modules. There's an awareness module to explain what this violence is and why this touches the workplace as well. And then modules that involve more expertise with people who teach good practices. I'll talk to you more about it, about what companies can do, what each person can do, be it human resources or colleagues or staff reps. Now, we also give awareness tools that are available for the employees in the offices with indications about who they can contact and advice, for example, as to how to react when there is a colleague that is declaring a situation of violence. Now, other actions that take place, we created an interactive thing where all those who are involved in Europe appear. That is to say, we give value to all these actions, and also this is how with the goal to direct people who are asking what to tell their colleagues as to where they should go to. And with Barbara here, we're doing some research. We're going to use the companies of our network to see what the impact of domestic violence is, not only for the employees, but for the company as well. And we're going to compare the costs of preventative measures and the compensation costs. So the idea of this study, we know very well that there's an impact, of course, and we also know that the prevention measures are less costly than the compensation costs, but the idea is to prove with a scientific piece of study that it is very important to invest in prevention and awareness measures, and that the companies should get involved in this matter. That's until 2019, and in 2020 we're going to accompany the companies one by one with a key action that they will have identified in the company. We're going to help them to deploy them, be it protocols for the victims or pilot action on a specific site. So this engagement charter I spoke to you about is really an engagement charter talking about the means to do things, not about the results. And the idea is that companies involved in this network will communicate, will participate, and will help us to build the tools and for them to use them as well, and to raise awareness internally and externally concerning domestic violence, and to create a network with different stakeholders. For example, the lady who spoke before was saying that it's very important for all the stakeholders to participate, and for the companies to know what the associations are, to be a connection with public entities, with the unions, with staff reps, which are key resources in this sense. So here you can see the signature, the signing of the engagement charter in Paris. And this charter was signed by the CEOs of these companies. It's very important for us for there to be political engagement in the company to push things. And we ask the companies that accompany this network to have it signed by the CEOs, so they'll be aware, so that everybody will be involved in talking about what we are doing. So we also did through our companies work in partnership with different stakeholders, different international organizations, different union federations, specialized organizations. And now I'm going to present to you a few good practices that have been identified in our network. You should know that there's a different level of maturity as far as domestic violence goes. Some are very knowledgeable already, others are not, but it's very good to do exchanges between the companies. They can talk about their difficulties, they can find solutions together that they might not find if they are working on their own. And that's why this network is so important. So as far as collaborating with stakeholders, mainly unions, in France, companies have the obligation to bargain with organizations of staff reps, and all the matter of women and men having equality is there. For example, there's no legal obligation in France, by the way, to bargain in the matter of domestic violence and the impact at the workplace. So Korian, which is a company, integrates domestic violence in its bargaining, and works hand in hand with the union. So there's a global agreement with UNIGlobalUnion having to do with domestic violence. They made a common declaration with the union saying they were going to work together to sensitize, to raise awareness, and to accompany women that are victims of domestic violence. And there's also work with specialized organizations, specialized associations that give financial support. For example, the Kering Foundation that wants to fight domestic violence, or the Foundation L that fights for women's equality. And also there is financial support in this matter. For example, there's a symbolic for a strong symbolic situation, and this helps the companies a lot. There's also Carrefour that works with UNIFEM, and every year UNIFEM organizes a campaign, an Orange Day, on the 25th of November, and in 2017 Carrefour sold oranges in all those stores, and all the benefits were distributed among women. There's also awareness actions that take place. So be it employees or staff reps, social assistants. So Kering, for example, has been working in this for about 10 years. They've trained more than 2,000 people, and they trained also their board of directors as well. They're now training each board of each company, so they do it at all the levels of the different companies. Other awareness actions is to, for example, distribute flyers, etc. Now, here you have an example of a flyer distributed by Kering, where there's different pieces of advice that are given to people in order to help a woman colleague which is a victim of domestic violence, because many times when a person tells us that the person is a victim, it's something very heavy. People don't know how to react. There's different things that can be done and that should not be done as well in order to welcome what is being said in the proper way. So this is the type of things that are distributed. There's also a guide of prevention for domestic violence that was distributed internally, but also in stores. So it's super interesting, because every time there's something done internally, they also have things with their clients. So they do that externally as well. Now, as far as human resources processes go, Carrefour has a very innovative policy. So women that are victims of domestic violence can ask for their pay to be paid in advance. For example, if they have to move or if they have some legal or medical issue to deal with. There's also flexibility in the hours, or possibilities to move geographically. There's also protection, and Carrefour and Korian work with specialized organizations to recruit women that are victims of domestic violence. So we know that the matter of financial independence is quite important when you're a victim of domestic violence. So this can be another way of engaging these companies. As far as accompanying victims, I already said it. There's all sorts of actions. For example, BNP Paribas did training, and they can, in fact, suggest to accompany those that are victims among their employees. They can give legal, psychological, medical support as well, and housing as well is an issue. So these companies, big companies like BNP Paribas have housing for their employees and women that are victims of domestic violence. That is a priority criterion, so they can find the housing quite fast for these women. Now, Korian, L'Oréal, they have a helpline. In fact, in France, most of the big companies are labeled as having to respect the matter of equality at the workplace, and one of the obligations is to have a helpline in order to diminish discrimination. So Korian and L'Oréal trained people for these helplines in the matter of domestic violence specifically, and so advice can be given to victims. In Greece, there's two other initiatives. Papastratos is a company that funds shelters for victims that are women that are victims of domestic violence, and Basilopoulos is a chain of supermarkets that gives to their employees certified lawyers that are specialized in domestic violence. There you go. I'm finished. I don't know whether you might have questions to ask.